There's a moment in almost every serious job search when the energy shifts. The interviews went well, the conversations felt aligned, compensation was discussed. You can feel momentum building. There's relief, there's optimism, there's the quiet thought of, this might actually work out. And then you hear one sentence, we're going to move forward with a background check. For a lot of professionals, that's when the anxiety starts creeping in. Not because they did anything wrong, but because suddenly the process feels out of their control. Up until this point, you've been able to explain yourself, tell your story, provide context. Now it feels like someone else is telling the story about you. And that's when people start replaying their entire career in their head. Old managers, messy exits, titles that evolved over time, roles that were restructured, companies that no longer exist. That one job you stayed in too long, that one you left quickly, that one situation that made sense at the time but feels risky in hindsight. And underneath all of that noise is one heavy question. What are they actually going to see? Are they talking to people I didn't expect? Are they reading between the lines? Are they judging things I never got a chance to explain? And here's the part I want you to hear clearly. This fear is incredibly common, especially among experienced professionals, because the higher you go, the more complex your career becomes and the more you have at stake. So in this video, we're going to slow this entire process down. No panic, no speculation, no worst case scenarios. We're going to look at how this actually works. I'm going to walk you through what employers can legally ask during a background check, what they cannot ask, and then what actually shows up on the report and how employers really interpret that information once it's delivered. Not what people assume, not what LinkedIn threads speculate about, what actually happens. By the end of this video, my goal is that you stop guessing and instead understand how to move through this phase calmly, confidently, and strategically. But before we dive in, if you're new here and haven't subscribed yet, hit the subscribe button and the bell to be notified every time we post a new video about job search advice, or if you're just looking for encouragement, wisdom, and practical guidance in your career transition journey, let us be your guide. Let me tell you why I wanted to make this video. Over the years, I've had countless conversations that start with, Chuks, I'm worried about the background check. And when I ask why, the answers are usually vague. It's complicated. There was a falling out. There's a history there. But once we slow things down and actually look at how background checks work, something interesting happens. Most of the fear disappears because what people imagine background checks are and what they actually are very different things. This isn't about employers digging for dirt. It's about process, structure, and compliance. And understanding that difference completely changes how you experience this stage. So if we haven't met yet, my name is Chuks Agada. Most people know me as Dr. A. I'm an executive career coach and former executive recruiter. I work with experienced professionals navigating high-stakes career decisions, leadership transitions, executive roles, and moments where one misstep can cost far more than just an opportunity. Through my work and career calibration, I've helped hundreds of directors, VPs, executives, and senior leaders navigate the job market with clarity and confidence, even in uncertain and changing markets. And one of the most consistent patterns I see is this. So if you're a seasoned professional who feels uneasy about what might come up during a background check, stay with me through to the end of this video. I'll show you what employers can and can't ask, what they actually see once the report is delivered, and how to prepare in a way that builds trust, not unnecessary concern. Now let's pull back the curtain and walk through what's actually happening during a background check. So here's something most candidates never hear, and once you understand it, it fundamentally changes how you experience this entire phase of the hiring process. So roughly 95% of employers in the United States use third-party companies to run background checks, especially larger organizations and companies that hire at scale. That statistics is important, not because it's impressive, but because of what it signals. It tells you this process is institutional, not personal. Your hiring manager is not sitting at their desk wondering what they can uncover about you. They're not combing through your past, making subjective judgments, or trying to read between the lines of your career. In most organizations, background checks are operationalized. They're triggered automatically, and once a hiring decision has reached a certain point, HR initiates the request, a third-party vendor runs the check, and the results are returned in a standardized format. That's intentional. These third-party providers exist to remove variability from the process. The role is to reduce bias, ensure accuracy, create consistency across candidates, and help employers remain compliant with federal and state regulations. So what's actually happening behind the scenes is not an investigation. It's a checkpoint, a final confirmation that asks a very narrow question. Does what we believe to be true align with what can be verified? That's it. And this matters because many professionals mentally treat background checks as if they are character evaluations. They imagine this moment as a referendum on their entire career, but structurally, that's not what it is. At this stage, the employer has already decided you're the right candidate. They've assessed your experience, interviewed you, evaluated fit, and discussed compensation. The background check is not designed to relegate those decisions. It's designed to confirm that the foundational facts are accurate. Once you understand that, the emotional weight of this step begins to shift. Instead of feeling scrutinized, you can see this for what it is: a procedural requirement designed to protect the organization, not judge the individual. And that reframing alone is enough to reduce a lot of unnecessary anxiety. So one of the biggest sources of fear around background checks is the assumption that employers see everything. They don't. Under federal regulations, including the Fair Credit Reporting Act, background check reports are intentionally filtered. Employers are only allowed to receive information that is accurate, relevant to employment, and legally permissible. That's not optional. It's how the system is designed. This means employers are not receiving narrative commentary. They're not getting opinions from former managers. They're not seeing interpersonal conflicts, emotional context, or subjective assessments of performance. Most background check reports answer very narrow factual questions. Did the person work where they said they worked? Do the dates generally align? Can this credential or license be verified? That's the scope. There is no section that explains why a role ended. There is no commentary about whether you were liked. There is no interpretation of intent or motivation. And this distinction matters because many candidates project far more meaning onto this process than actually exists. Background checks are not storytelling tools. They are verification tools. They're designed to answer binary questions, yes or no, confirmed or unconfirmed. That's also why so many professionals are surprised when they finally see a background check report. It's often far less detailed than they imagine. This filtering exists for a reason. Without it, employers would expose themselves to significant legal risks. Subjective information introduces bias. Bias creates liability, and liability is exactly what organizations are trying to avoid at this stage. So the process is intentionally constrained. Understanding this helps you separate what belongs in your narrative. Interviews, conversations, positioning from what belongs in verification, those are two different stages, two different tools, two different purposes. When you blur them together, fear increases. When you separate them, clarity returns. So here's another reality that most candidates never hear, and it's one of the most important mindset shifts you can make. When background checks raise questions, it's often not because the candidate did something wrong, it's because of errors. Clerical mistakes, outdated databases, companies that change systems or no longer exist, different reporting standards across jurisdictions, even similar names attached to the wrong record. This happens far more often than people realize. In fact, a significant portion of background check disputes stem from inaccurate or incomplete information, not disqualifying behavior. That's precisely why the system includes dispute and review protections. Those protections exist because errors are expected. So if an employer pauses or asks for clarification, it doesn't automatically mean something is wrong. It doesn't mean the offer is gone. It doesn't mean you're disqualified. It doesn't mean your career is suddenly a problem. More often, it means a question mark has appeared, not a red flag. And that distinction matters. A red flag signals risk. A question mark signals uncertainty. Uncertainty can be resolved. And that's why staying calm at this stage is so important. When candidates panic, they often overshare, over-explain, or assume guilt where none exists. But a pause in the process doesn't mean judgment. It usually means clarification. Understanding that allows you to respond thoughtfully instead of emotionally. And that in turn reinforces trust rather than eroding it. So if any of this is hitting close to home, do me a favor and tap that like button. It really helps this video reach more seasoned professionals who need it. And quick question for you. When you hear background check, what part of your past makes you pause, even if logically you know it shouldn't? Drop it in the comments. You're not alone in this. When employers review a background check, they are not looking for a flawless career. They're looking for alignment. They want to know whether the information in the report broadly matches what you represented during the interview process. They're asking, does this make sense? Does this align with what we're told? Is there anything here we don't understand? A nonlinear career is not a problem. A difficult manager is not a problem. A role that didn't work out is not automatically a problem. What creates concern is inconsistency. When details don't line up, employers start wondering whether there's something missing, and missing information introduces uncertainty. At this stage of the process, employers are risk managing. They've already decided you're qualified. Now they're ensuring there are no surprises that could create legal, financial, or reputational exposure. That's why clarity matters more than protection. Most hiring managers understand that careers are complex. They expect evolution, they expect change, they expect nuance. What they don't want is to feel misled. When alignment exists, background checks become routine. When alignment is missing, even small discrepancies can feel larger than they are. That's why preparation is not about crafting the perfect past. It's about ensuring consistency between your story and what can be verified. This is the most important point in the entire conversation. In the rare cases where offers fall apart after a background check, it's usually not because of what's in someone's past. It's because of how that past was represented. Inflated titles, implied degrees that weren't completed, dates that were intentionally adjusted, omissions that feel strategic rather than incidental. Those moments break trust, not because employers expect perfection, they don't, but because trust is the foundation of senior level hiring. Once trust is questioned, risks increase. And at this stage of the process, employers are actively reducing risk. This is where many candidates misunderstand the stakes. They assume that hiding complexity is safer than explaining it. But in reality, misrepresentation introduces far more risk than transparency ever does. Employers expect careers to be human. They expect change, they expect imperfection. What they don't tolerate is feeling misled. That's why preparation isn't about oversharing or confessing every detail of your past. It's about alignment, accuracy, consistency, credibility. When your story and the verification process align, background checks become procedural rather than stressful. And that's the position you want to be in. A background check isn't a judgment of your value. It's a confirmation step. And when you understand how it works, it stops feeling intimidating. It starts feeling manageable. If you're navigating a job search right now and want support making sure your story, materials, and positioning build trust instead of raising unnecessary concerns, that's exactly what we help with at Career Calibration. You'll find resources in the links below. And if this video helped, watch this one next. 7 interview flags, how to spot a bad employer. Because evaluating them matters as much as them evaluating you. Also, would you like expert job search advice delivered weekly into your inbox? Sign up to join our exclusive email list. Get exclusive insights designed to help you land your next role. Sign up today by clicking on the link below and take control of your job search. And finally, if you like this video, be sure to subscribe and comment below. See you next time. Over and out.